Hi, everybody. So instead of filming numerous videos where I say this is a update with my reading progress on my TBR, what I decided to do instead is film sort of a wrap-up of my thematic wrap-ups that I've been doing throughout the year, which also counts as a reading progress because some of the books that I'm reviewing in this video are books that I'm reading right now. So, let's begin, because I have several different thematic updates to talk about. The first one is perfect for summer. If you're looking for books to read on the beach, these are great choices. The first one is Beach Read by Emily Henry, which is about two authors named Gus and January who go to stay at the lake for the summer and swap ideas for books so they can write in each other's genres. It's a really cool concept. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. And since my mom is reading this book right now, I really don't want to spoil anything about it for her, so I'm not going to say about anything that happens. But it gets pretty emotional closer to the end. For a warning. So get tissues ready. The next book is called Happy Place, also by Emily Henry. This book focuses on a group of people who have been friends since college and now they're in their mid-30s. So I connect to the characters in this book because they're around my age, but I can't say I can personally connect to the characters who are in a relationship, who are in a breakup, but I just love the dynamic of the friend group, and I have reviewed Happy Place before in a previous video. So if you want my full thoughts on that video, go back to my romance reads video from February when I was reviewing romance books for Valentine's Day, and you will get my full thoughts. Actually, no, I think I actually read Happy Place in March in my St. Patrick's Day video. So, please check out that review for my full thoughts and star rating. The next book was Abby Jimenez's release from April, which is Just for the Summer, which is the 3rd book in the series called Part of Your World. This 3-book series includes the books Part of Your World, Yours Truly, which I'm currently rereading right now for my Disability Pride Month TBR, which I'll talk about in a bit, and Just for the Summer. Just for the Summer focuses on Justin and Emma. They form a relationship based on a bet that they have that, like Justin posts something on Tumblr about his friendship, not Tumblr, Reddit, about, like, his relationship's not lasting a long time, and, like, he makes a bet with Emma that their relationship won't last a long time and that they'll break up. I'm not going to spoil anything that happens in this book in case there are people out there who have not read it yet and want to read it, but I just need to say that 2 things are incredibly sweet in this book. Justin's relationship with Emma and Justin's acts of service that he does. He does this really sweet thing where he will send Emma pre-date questionnaires asking about what she wants to do, and post-date about how the experience was and how his behavior was and whatever. I just think it's really sweet that he really puts a lot of thought into the relationship like that. And another thing that's really sweet is Justin's relationship with his siblings, who are younger than him, because his mom kind of gets up and abandons them, so he has to take care of his younger brother and sister. So I hope that Abby Jimenez will write a spin-off to this book that focuses on the families of Justin and Emma and Brianna and Jacob from Yours Truly, because at the end of Yours Truly, there's a bonus epilogue where Justin and Brianna get married. Jason and Brianna, Jacob and Brianna get married. So, like, I would like to see a book written by Abby Jimenez about their relationships with their kids, because I think that would be sweet. Because one thing I liked about Things We Hide from the Light, the last book in the Knockout trilogy by Lucy Score, was there was a bonus trilogy, and there was a bonus epilogue that focuses on, like, all of the characters at Christmas time. And by this point, what is that girl's name? Oh no, this is bad. What is that character's name? Waylay is married and has a kid. So now Naomi and Knox are grandparents. So I really liked that, and that's why I am putting this message out to Abby Jimenez with the suggestion that she should write a book about the families of Brianna and Jacob and Justin and Emma. The next book that I want to talk about in the Lake Beach Vibes TBR list is One Italian Summer, which is a book I just finished. This book is about a girl who loses her mother. I think she dies of cancer. And she goes on a journey to Italy to find basically the story about her family's history and stuff like that. And I really love the writing. And I also love the Italy setting, which is why I picked it up, because it makes me crave the Italian countryside and miss my family, who I haven't seen since 2008. So I hope to one day get back to visit them. Another book I recently read this summer that is set in Italy is called Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welch, the same person who wrote Spells for Forgetting, I think the book is called, or it's another book about witches, but I can't remember the title of it. But yes, that's another book set in Italy that I would highly recommend to people. That kind of has similar themes to One Italian Summer. And the next book I wanted to mention is This Summer Will Be Different, which is Carly Fortune's new release for May. Carly Fortune also wrote Every Summer After, which I still need to read, and Meet Me at the Lake, which I gave 4.75 stars to back in April or May. And this summer, what I loved about This Summer Will Be Different is the island setting of Prince Edward Island, which is the setting for Anne of Green Gables. I'm hoping Matt and I are hoping to plan a trip to Prince Edward Island next year for our anniversary. So we're pretty excited about that. So I don't really want to provide any spoilers in case you want to read This Summer Will Be Different, but I also love the relationship buildup between the two main characters, Lucy and Felix, and I don't want to spoil anything about that for you guys. So the next thematic TBR I wanted to focus on are book recommendations from Riley Marie and Sarah Without an H. These are two new Booktuber channels that I follow. Sarah is from Georgia and Riley is from Texas, and they're a little bit younger than me, but they have very similar book tastes to me, and I've been really enjoying the books they recommended. The top favorite books that I have on the TBR with their recommendations in them is Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Valdry, who also wrote Legends and Lattes. What I like about both of these books is how it's basically in Bookshops and Bone Dust is set in a bookstore that's owned by an ogre, and the book that follows it, Legends and Lattes, is kind of like a similar vibe with a coffee shop that's owned by an orc and an ogre. And I just love the fantasy setting. I love the world building that Travis Baldry provides for these characters, and the relationship that forms between the two main characters and how it builds up. The next book I wanted to talk about is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the Infernal Devices series, which is the prequel series to Mortal Instruments. I would like to first of all thank Sarah and other booktubers who have read Cassandra Clare's books, who have really hyped them up, because I'm a little bit older than a lot of you guys, so I kind of missed the boat on Cassandra Clare's books. They came out after I graduated from college, so I'm kind of late to the game in reading them, but I really, really liked Clockwork Angel, and I can't wait to read the rest of the series. Like, I couldn't put the book down the whole entire time I was reading it, except when I needed to put it down to read a different book, because I'm reading a lot of these books that I'm reviewing, like, at the same time, so I can get content out to you guys. The next book I wanted to talk about is Don't Love You Like a Best Friend by Emma Albin. This is the first book in a series about romantic comedies set in Regency, England. So basically, this is like Bridgerton combined with 90s romantic comedy. This book gives off vibes of The Parent Trap, because the two debutantes are trying to hook their parents up who have been divorced for a little while. So it's definitely like The Parent Trap, because in The Parent Trap, the twins are trying to link up their parents who have been divorced and separated for as long as they've been alive. And reading this book really makes me want to watch The Parent Trap again, specifically the version from the 90s with Lindsay Lohan. I mean, I like the original version with Hayley Mills, but one thing I totally forgot about with the Lindsay Lohan version is that Maggie Wheeler from Friends, the one who played Janice, like, oh my god, I totally forgot that she was in that movie as a camp counselor, so that's why I want to watch that movie again, because I haven't watched it in a long time. The next book is Swordheart by T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher seems to be well known for her horror books, and I'm not sure how many of those I'm going to read, because me and horror, we don't seem to gel. But Swordheart is really good. It's about, like, from the main character in Swordheart, she kind of reminds me of Merida from the Pixar movie Brave, because, like, she's a princess who doesn't want to live by the rules and doesn't want to live by the rules of convention and be married. So she's basically ready to be married off to somebody in alliance, but, like, she basically tells her family she doesn't want to get married, and she, like, pulls a sword from his sheath, and this person, this, like, figure person, like a fantastical creature, pops out of the sword sheath and basically is her spirit guide through her whole adventure to help her find true love, which I really enjoyed. The next book I read was Tress of the Emerald Sea. Actually, the next two books I'm talking about are by Brandon Sanderson, and they are the first two books of his that I've read. I can't wait to read the rest of his books because I really like his writing and find it engaging. Tress of the Emerald Sea was definitely inspired by my favorite 80s movie, The Princess Bride. And that's what I really like about it. Like, you can tell that when Brandon Sanderson... First of all, I think it's really sweet that Brandon Sanderson wrote this book for his wife. And I am assuming by reading this book that if it was inspired by The Princess Bride, then maybe The Princess Bride is his wife's favorite movie, and that's what made him write it. So, yeah, I just thought the fantasy world was engaging, and, like, her little spirit guide mouse friend reminds me of Rizzo the Rat from the Muppets. And the next book that I read by Brandon Sanderson was Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, which was, I forget which video Sarah and Riley mentioned this book in, but it's a really sweet romance between two teenagers who live in Japan, and I really enjoyed the build-up to their relationship and thought it was really sweet. The next thematic focus I wanted to talk about is books as seen on TV. So I have finished most of the books on this TBR. The only book that I'm still working my way through is The Picture of Dorian Gray. Kathleen and I are 30% done with the audiobook right now, and we're listening to more of it on Saturday afternoon. And we're hoping to finish that by like the end of August or beginning of September. And we will be reviewing that in September when Kelly Bishop's memoir comes out. The books that I have read for the books as seen on TV for top favorites are, so Anne of Green Gables was actually mentioned in Jack Edwards' video. Are the books that Lisa Simpson reads age appropriate? And I really liked this video because it introduced me to some other books I'm going to be adding to my ever-growing TBR. But a book that actually this video by Jack Edwards inspired me to pick up was The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. So I'm looking forward to reading that around Halloween. He also talked about in his video Emily Dickinson's poetry, which I have a collection of, and Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman, which is another poetry book I really like. And as I have mentioned before when I previously reviewed Anne of Green Gables in another video, I love it. I might have read this book series when I was a kid, but it was such a long time ago that I don't really remember it, so that's what made me really excited to pick it up again. And another thing that made me read the books again was because I think it was in 2011 or 2012, I remember Riverbend School of Theater Arts did the play of Anne of Green Gables. I think Olivia Vordenberg was in it as Marilla. I might be remembering that wrong. I don't remember who was in the play, but I remember it being one of my favorite plays that I saw at the Amato Center out of the many shows I saw there over the years. Anne is probably one of my favorite characters because she's in a book like ever, because she's the one I connect to the most because she's so optimistic and so spunky. And I am on book 3 of the Anne of Green Gables series, and the series is 8 books long. So I will be working my way through that series. The next book that I read that I really liked in my TBR for books as seen on TV is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. This is a mystery book that I could not put down, and I remember also this was a play I saw at the Amato Center back in like 2011 or 2012. Milford Area Players did it in 2011 or 2012, and my two favorite characters were Captain Lombard and Vera Claythorne, who were played by my friends Kevin and Sophie Winkram, who I hope are doing well. I haven't talked to them too much since I moved to Maine, so Kevin and Sophie, if you are watching this video, leave a comment down below and let me know how you are doing, because I miss you guys. So yes, the thing I love about And Then There Were None is all the plot twists that go on, and it keeps you guessing about, like, who the killer actually is, and then when the killer is actually revealed, it's really surprising. So I don't want to spoil anything. Please read it. It's really good. The next book in my Books Unread as TV TBR that I loved is Little Women. And the next two books are featured in one of my favorite episodes from season 3 of Friends, the one where Monica and Richard are just friends when Rachel and Joey swap books with each other. And Joey reads Little Women and Rachel reads The Shining. Now, so Stephen King is known for writing a lot of horror books. I feel like most of his books that I have read are not that scary. They're very suspenseful, but they're not very scary. That's the key detractor, I think, for listing The Shining as a horror book, because I was not scared throughout that book. I was intensely waiting on the edge of my seat to see what would happen next, and I was also hoping that Wendy would get it through her head that she needed to get her and Danny away from Jack because he was abusive. So I was kind of disappointed with the ending of that book because, well, if you read the book or seen the movie of The Shining, you probably know what happens, so I'm not going to say anything. But The Shining is a movie that I really want to watch, and I was at a family reunion last week in Center Barnstead, New Hampshire, with my dad's cousins, and I was talking to my cousin Juliana, and we were talking about getting together to watch some horror movies during the fall, so I'm looking forward to making plans with her to do that, because I was never really into horror when I was younger. I'm more getting into it now because I'm just trying new things, and I think what made me so averse to watching horror movies in the past was I thought the plots of the movies would give me nightmares, and blood. Blood and gore. Oh, and Little Women is the other book that I read. I have rambled on and on about how much I loved Little Women in other videos, but to roll up what I have said, basically what I loved about this book is the relationship between all of the sisters. The character I relate to the most is Jo, because she's a writer and a reader, and the saddest part is when Beth dies. I'm assuming that lots of people have read Little Women, so I'm hoping the fact that Beth dies is not a spoiler, but there's a scene in the Friends episode this book is featured in where they're talking in the coffee house about the books, and Joey gets really upset because Rachel spoils the fact for him that Beth dies, and they're having a conversation about that, and Ross says to Rachel, basically Joey is upset because you have spoiled the movie, you have spoiled the book of his favorite movie that doesn't star Jack Nicholson. The next TBR I wanted to mention is is Pride Month. So I've already talked about some of these books in my Pride Month TBR wrap-up that I made a couple of weeks ago, but there were some books in that video that I did not mention, including next month's book discussion group for Print Bookstore. So my first book that I read that I really liked for this TBR is called Big Swiss by Jen Began. I gave this book a B- and 4.5 stars on Goodreads. So this book is about a person who works as a transcriptionist for a sex therapist, and she basically starts a relationship with one of her clients. Here's a spoiler. In one conversation at like a party or some kind of social event, somebody comes up to her and says, "Oh, you have such a sisterly bond with this person." But to be honest with you, because of the age gap, the sex therapist transcriptionist person is in her 40s and the other character is in her 20s. So I saw their dynamic as mother and daughter and not really sisterly or close friends, which is what made their relationship kind of gross. And I mean, it was also very unprofessional and unethical for this sex therapist transcriptionist to actually track down her patient and start a relationship with her. I just thought that was very creepy and strange. The next book I want to talk about, I just talked about this one in A Sorrow Without an H. Don't Want You Like a Best Friend. I highly recommend Don't Want You Like a Best Friend, especially if you're a fan of either Bridgerton or The Parent Trap. The next book I wanted to talk about was Orlando, which was the Reading the Rainbow pick for April for Print Bookstore. Orlando is by Virginia Woolf, and basically I liked Orlando better when he transferred over to being a woman, because when he was a man, he was a really big jerk. So basically in Orlando has a sex change operation, which was not very well known at the time that Virginia Woolf was alive, which was like in the 1800s, I think. So Orlando was my first book by Virginia Woolf, and I'm looking forward to reading more stuff by her in the future. The next book is a book I just finished. It's called Outlawed, and it's a cowboy romance with two lesbian cowgirls in it. So it's Brokeback Mountain, but with cowgirls. And I have never seen Brokeback Mountain, but I really want to now that I have read this book Outlawed, so that way I can compare the relationships between the two male cowboys in the movie and their relationship, played by Jake Gyllenhaal and the late Heath Ledger, and the two main characters in this book. And basically, what I liked the most about Outlawed was the relationship development between the two main characters, and also the found family trope between the cowgirl and all of her friends. And I have already talked about... I have already mentioned Something Wild and Wonderful in The Wicker King in previous videos, so I will tag those videos down below so you can hear those reviews. Currently, we are in Disability Pride Month. I am pre-recording this on July 21st, but it will not be posted until August 18th, so by then Disability Pride Month will be over. So I have been reading books with disabled protagonists pretty much all year. So this list is a cumulative list of books that I have read since January that have disabled characters in them. The first book I wanted to talk about is Breathe and Count Back from 10, which I just returned to the library the other day. This book is about a 16-year-old girl who is Mexican, I think. It's some kind of Spanish heritage. I don't remember if it's Mexican or Dominican or whatever, but she has hip dysplasia, and she's a swimmer, so I think her disability really hampers her in order to swimming, so she gets accepted to this place in Florida called Mermaid Cove, which is actually a real place where you can go swim with mermaids, apparently. I have never heard of that. I've heard of a similar thing before, but it's about with dolphins and not with mermaids. So I really liked the main character I really liked the main character and how she wasn't really afraid to stand up about her disability, because her parents didn't really seem too confident in their daughter with their disability and being able to, like, be an advocate for herself. They seemed really afraid for her to, like, talk about her disability with other people, which I didn't really like. The next book I wanted to talk about, I've reviewed in a romantic comedy video. It's Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring Blake, book 3 in the Bright Fall series. The Bright Fall series is set in Oregon, and basically all of the couples in these books are lesbians, and the reason why I like Iris Kelly Doesn't Date the best of the whole series is because Iris's girlfriend Stevie has anxiety, and much like Jacob in Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, Ashley Herring Blake did a really good job with representing anxiety and how Stevie manages it, and I could really relate to her as much as I could relate to Jacob in Yours Truly. I'm not going to really talk about Yours Truly very much because Anna and I are planning to review that later on in the spring, later on in the fall, and also I've talked about it before, so most of my thoughts about that book haven't really changed too much. The next book I wanted to talk about is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I loved Iron Flame. I loved Fourth Wing. Let's not talk about Iron Flame. In this series, I really liked the disability representation for Violet. I loved the first book and the build-up of Xaden and Violet's relationship. Everything was thrown out the window in Iron Flame, and I feel like that book really needed better editing because it was too long. The plot took too long to develop, and Xaden and Violet's relationship got degraded down to almost nothing because he turned out to be a jerk. And he really puts down Violet a lot and is really mean to her, which I didn't really like. So sadly, I will not be continuing with the series that Fourth Wing and Iron Flame is in. I know there's a new book in that series coming out soon, but I will not be reading it because I was so disappointed with Iron Flame that I just don't want to continue with the series. The next book is called Life's Too Short. This is another book by Abby Jimenez that has great disability representation in it. It is the third book in the Friend Zone series. Let's talk about this series for a second. So, this is another 3-book series by Abby Jimenez. Part of Your World, whole series, gets 4 stars, all across the board. My ratings for the books in the Friend Zone series are all over the place. I hated the Friend Zone, and I almost didn't want to read the Happy Ever After playlist. I couldn't stand either of the characters in the Friend Zone. The male character was a misogynist. Sarah without an H thinks that he was a Republican. I agree with her because he was like obsessed with guns and everything like that. He was really mean to Kristen and put her down a lot. And basically he had no respect for her when he kept telling her that when she kept telling him that he couldn't have kids because he was like really obsessed with having a big family and having like a family with 8 to 10 kids. And in the beginning of this book, Kristen is said to have endometriosis, which basically means she can't have babies because she's infertile. But spoiler alert, sorry if you guys want to actually read The Friend Zone, but I'm going to spoil the ending. Basically, Kristen and Josh end up having a baby together, like a surprise baby, because they don't wear protection when they have sex, and it just kind of ruined the whole book for me that happened, because the whole point of the disability representation in this book was that it was supposed to be good representation for people who have endometriosis or other kinds of things that don't allow them to have kids, and Abby Jimenez basically threw that out the window. What I love about the disability representation in Life's Too Short, which is the third book in this series. The second book in this series is the Happy Ever After playlist, which I love and have no complaints about. In Life's Too Short, we have Vanessa, who has ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, and Adrian. I love Adrian. He's really sweet to Vanessa. He really cares about her disability and tries to like make adjustments for her so that like he can be the best that he can be in a relationship. And another thing I think this is great that touches on is substance use disorder, because Vanessa has to adopt her niece because her sister is a deadbeat mom and she's addicted to heroin, and she basically cannot take care of her kid because of her drug addiction. So Vanessa and Adrian end up adopting her. The baby's name is Grace, and I kind of want Abby Jimenez to also write a book that's a follow-up to Life's Too Short about Adrian and Vanessa raising Grace, or how long Vanessa actually has to raise Grace, because that's like, it's left pretty open-ended at the end of Life's Too Short, how long Vanessa actually lives. Kind of like in The Notebook with Nicholas, not The Notebook, A Walk to Remember, when Jamie has cancer, like, in that book, they get married before Jamie passes away. But, like, in an alternative ending to that, I would have loved to see if they actually ended up having any kids, or how long it took Jamie's cancer to, like, really, how long it took her to die, and if she was able to actually have any kids, because that was left pretty open-ended. And the same thing is left open-ended in Life's Too Short with Vanessa's ALS. So what I'm basically saying is that Abby Jimenez should write sequels to her books that focus on the family units of all of their characters that have kids at the end of her book. Sorry. I don't know what happened with that. But as I was saying before I started to cough, if Abby Jimenez is watching my video, which I doubt that she is, I hope that she makes sequels to Life's Too Short, Yours Truly, and Just for the Summer. Maybe does a bind up of all 3 books. to see where all of these characters end up and like how they manage their disabilities in the case of Jacob with his anxiety and Vanessa with her ALS. So that would be amazing if she could do that. Another book that I am reading at the moment, which I will be done with by the time this video posts, is called Mighty, which is a series about essays about disabled superheroes, which I love. I love this book because it combines two of my favorite things: raising awareness about disabilities and superheroes. I haven't finished this book yet, and I will be able to comment on it more later on when I do another monthly wrap-up. Like, I think when I do my fall monthly wrap-up, I'll talk about this book a little bit more, because I am not done with it yet. So the next TBR list I wanted to talk about today for thematic focus is new releases. I will do an addendum to this list in another video, because I will be talking about Swan Song by Ilan Heldenbrand, Middle of the Night by Riley Sager, The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer, and Emily what's her name? The one from Gilmore Girls. Kelly Bishop. Why did I think her name was Emily? So I think I'm going to review the rest of the new releases in September when Kelly Bishop's memoir comes out. And that's when I will also review The Picture of Dorian Gray. So my favorite books in this TBR were A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston, which I just reviewed in my video before this when I did the Taylor Swift coded TBR addendum, which focused the prompt that this book went with for Taylor Swift prompts was Tortured Poet Society. But again, as I said, this was a book that I connected most with the main character on, because she basically, the main character in this book, Ellie, she falls into the town that her romance books are set in, and I think it's really cute. Like, when I read romance books or watch romantic comedy movies or TV show episodes, like, for example, when I watch Gilmore Girls, I love to picture myself in Stars Hollow, or I'm almost done rereading Harry Potter, and I love to picture myself next to Ron and Hermione and Harry in the classroom learning how to cast spells. Or, like, for example, when I watch Friends, I picture myself, like, basically, like, I wrote a whole fan fiction to memorialize Matthew Perry's death about how I connected with Chandler's character. So if you want to go back and watch my fan fiction chapter videos where I share my fan fiction chapters, please go ahead. I know that doesn't interest everybody, but I also, like, insert myself into Cougar Town episodes when I watch them, especially the more recent episodes I've been watching from season 5 where Jules finds out that her dad has Alzheimer's, like, I'm really able to, like, picture myself in her shoes because I can relate to her so completely because of my grandmothers both having Alzheimer's / dementia. And I talk about it in a video I made on Friday about my connection to the Alzheimer's plot in Cougar Town, and I'll link that down below. Because this video is already long, and I don't feel like talking about that, because that will make this longer. I've reviewed Happily Never After. But I will say again that what I liked the best about that book, besides the dynamic between Sophie and Max, the two main characters, is the relationship between Sophie and her neighbors, Rose and Harry, because they are just really sweet to her and they remind me of my grandparents who have passed away and how close I was to them. The next book I wanted to talk about was Tangled Up in You, which is the 4th book in the Meant to Be series. This is definitely one of my favorite books by Christina Lauren, besides Love and Other Words. So Tangled Up in You is part of a series of books that reimagine Disney princess movies for the modern day. Like, Tangled Up in You is basically Rapunzel, and she's off at college, and, like, Flynn Rider's character is kind of like a bad boy student. His name is Edward, and he's, like, the kind of person who, like, doesn't go to class and doesn't pay attention to school, and, Rapunzel's character's name is Wren, and she comes from a strict household, kind of like controlling mother with Mother Gothel, and I don't think it is really said what she's there in college to study, but I'm pretty sure she studies something related to fashion. If she doesn't, that's what she should study, or like hair design, or something like that, because, you know, Rapunzel has long hair, and she also has a really pretty dress in the Disney movie, where Mandy Moore voices her, and I saw something on Instagram, actually, that Sabrina Carpenter has been picked by Mandy Moore to play Rapunzel in the live-action version of Tangled, which I can't wait for that movie to come out. I'm excited about that. I talked about the rom-commers in the video I made on Friday, but as I was saying in that video, that is probably one of my top favorite books by Catherine Center. I highly recommend it. The Rule Book by Sarah Adams. Sarah Adams is definitely one of my new favorite authors. The other books by her that I have liked are To Catch a Suitor and Practice Makes Perfect, and One in Rome. So, as I mentioned in my previous video, what I like the best about the Rule Book is that I was able to connect to the lead character, Nora, because she is a journalist, and as people know, I went to college to study journalism, communications, and the last new release I want to talk about was Tom Selleck's memoir, which, as I have mentioned before, he doesn't really talk a lot about friends in this book, but he mostly focuses on, like, the shows he was on in the 80s, like Magnum P.I., and the movie he was in, 3 Men and a Baby, which I love. That movie is so much fun. If you haven't seen it, you definitely should check it out. It's really funny. The next TBR I wanted to wrap up in this video. I'm sorry this video was so long, but I have so many books to talk about and recommend to you guys. So the first book in this TBR that was my top favorite was Major Peregru's Last Stand, which is a romance comedy between a retired war general and a woman from Russia. And I loved the buildup in their relationship, even though sometimes miscommunication got in the way because of a language barrier. Malibu Rising is my second book that is my favorite book in this TBR. And Beach Read and Malibu Rising are crossover books from Beach Lake Vibes TBR and Taylor Swift TBR. So as I mentioned before in a previous video, my favorite thing about Malibu Rising is the sibling dynamics between Nora and her siblings. Not Nora, Nina. I'm thinking of Nora goes off script for some reason. So the sibling dynamic I enjoy the most in Malibu Rising is between Nina and her little sister Kit, because I'm an older sister. I have a younger sister who is 6.5 years younger than me, and it makes me think of the dynamic that we have. The next book I wanted to talk about is Never Met a Duke Like You. This is another Regency romance book that is set during the times of Bridgerton. And what I really like the most about this book is how the author Amelie Howard wrote a neurodivergent Regency princess into her book. And as I have mentioned before in previous videos, I am neurodivergent, which means I have a disability on the autism spectrum, but I am not actually autistic. So just to clarify that, because I know in a previous video when I talked about my disability at one point or another, I said I was autistic. I erased that comment from your memories and say that I am neurodivergent and not autistic. And that's what I like the most about Vesper's character, because it was interesting to see how she handles situations in that time period. And I really hope more authors write books with neurodivergent characters, because that would be so cool to see different historical fiction books with neurodivergent characters. The next book I wanted to talk about that was my favorite from the Taylor Swift coded TBR was The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. This book has pretty differing opinions on it, and I know in one of her more recent videos, Sarah Without an H ranted about this book for 10 minutes and how much she hated it. There are some points in her review that I do agree with, most prominently how the police questioned Christopher, who is 4 years old, about where he wants to go live after his parents died. Like, that is so unrealistic, and police in real life would not ask a 4-year-old boy that. But what I like the most about The Wishing Game is how maternal Lucy is towards Christopher, and how she's kind of obsessed with adopting the kid. So Lucy is a 24-year-old one-on-one paraprofessional in a kindergarten, and Christopher is one of her students in the kindergarten preschool classroom, and his parents die of a drug overdose, which is really messed up. And I really feel bad for Christopher, because he's pretty much abandoned as a very young child because his parents died due to drugs. And I think his relationship dynamic with Lucy is very adorable. That is, like, the one thing I liked about that book. In the book, for those of you who are not familiar with the Wishing Game, Lucy's favorite author from her childhood, Jack, who wrote her favorite book series, the Clock Island series, which in my version, in my mind, this is a fictionalized series that's kind of similar to like the Magic Treehouse series, which was a book series that my sister read when she was younger. So basically, it's kind of like Willy Wonka and a Chocolate Factory. He is coming back from being retired, and he's writing a new Clock Island book and wants to like give his manuscript away to one person who is really a big fan of his book. So Lucy and a couple of other people are invited to his island to do like Hunger Games style games. And like, it's intense. And Sarah without an H mentioned in her rant about how there were too many sad backstories. Like, Hugo is Jack is a closeted gay man, and he really wanted to have a kid because he couldn't have kids because in the 90s, people weren't as accepting of gay and lesbian people as they are today. Hugo, the illustrator for the covers of the Clock Island books, that backstory is actually sad because he basically got into illustration because his little brother, who had Down syndrome, really wanted him to illustrate the book covers because Clock Island was his favorite book covers, and then the brother who has Down syndrome like dies tragically, and that's really very sad. I don't want to spoil any more of this book if you want to read it, but I'm looking forward to Make Schaefer's new book, The Lost Story, which just came out on Tuesday. I have that on reserve at the library. Basically, this book is loosely inspired by Chronicles of Narnia, which is a book series I'm dying to reread, and it will certainly be next on my list. Sorry this is so long, guys. We're almost finished, but I'm really hoping that you'll come away from this video with so many new recommendations. I usually do shorter form videos with all these thematic reviews, but the reason why I decided to do my wrap up in this way was because I wanted to talk about my favorite books in all of these thematic TBRs, so that way you don't have to go back and rewatch all of my old videos again, because that would take you so long to do. But if you would like to go back and watch my past videos, please do go ahead. I encourage you to do that. One book I forgot to mention in the books as read on TV TBR that I liked was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I loved that book so much, and the relationship build up between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. And then my other favorite character in a book by Jane Austen is Anne from Persuasion. I love her. She's iconic. The second to last TBR I wanted to talk about was the current TBR I'm working my way through, which is books I read in school. Does my opinions change? So last night I had my high school reunion, and I wish I had talked to my classmates about what books they liked so I could have gotten their opinions about some of these books that we read when we were growing up. The first book in this list that I liked a lot is actually from college. It's from a class I took in college called Multicultural Education with Phil Huckins. This is another book that focuses on neurodivergency and autism. It's called A Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon, and it's set in London, and it's centered around a 12-year-old boy named Christopher who has autism, and basically a dog in his neighborhood gets killed mysteriously, and he goes out on a mission to solve this mystery and figure out who killed the dog. But it's also a book about how kids with autism relate to their peers and the adult figures in their life. And I remember when I first read this book, one thing that stood out to me was, much like in The Wishing Game, with Lucy having a close relationship with Christopher, one person that Christopher in this book, The Curiousness in Dog in Nighttime, has is with his teacher. I don't remember his teacher's name off the top of my head, but this teacher is really supportive of what he wants to do with finding the murderer of the missing dog, and their relationship is very sweet. But you're left at the end of the book with a cliffhanger, because I don't remember something the teacher says to him. I don't remember what it was, but that was a huge cliffhanger that left me shook the first time I read the book, and then this time when I reread it. The next book in this TBR is Hatchet by Gary Paulson. So, Hatchet and The Giver were two books that I read in middle school and 6th and 7th grade respectively that I did not realize until recently were part of a series. So now I'm going to reread all of these series. Like right now I'm on book 2 of the series with The Giver in it, which is a 4-book series. And then Hatchet is a 3-book series. So I will probably be reviewing these series in a later wrap-up once I read all of the books. So stay tuned for those reviews. But what I liked about Hatchet was it's a story of survival, because this kid, Brian, who's 13, he basically gets in a plane crash, and he gets stranded in a wilderness for 54 days. And I really enjoyed his story of survival and re-engaging myself with it. Like, I read this book when I was 12, and I remember not liking it because I thought it was boring, and I thought the kid was going to die because he was alone in the wilderness for so long. But he didn't, obviously. Spoiler alert, he lives. He survives. So now I really want to read the next 2 books in the series to see what happens to him next. Because also, like, a big plot point in this book is that his parents are divorcing, and he has a huge issue with getting adjusted to his parents' divorce. So I feel like in the next couple of books, that's going to be touched upon in a much extended viewpoint. The next book I read is Number of the Stars by... The next 2 books that I read for this TBR are by Lois Lowry. The first book is called Number of the Stars, which I read in 7th grade. And it's set during World War II, and it's basically kind of like The Book Thief, and about how a girl who is living through the Holocaust interacts with her family and survives the troubling time. I also recently read The Book Thief for my TBR last month, and I really enjoyed it. Last month as in June, because I'm filming this at close to the end of July, and this video will be posted in August. So anyway, yeah, I loved Number of the Stars. I loved The Book Thief. I love reading books about World War II because, as I mentioned before, in 7th grade, we learned about the Holocaust, and we had this lady who was a Holocaust survivor named Alicia Appleman-German come to talk to us, and I really loved hearing about her story. I was 14. So I still have that book on my bookcase. It has survived a long time because I read in 7th grade, and then my sister read it 6.5 years after me, and Alicia Appleman-German also came to talk to her class. So I think she's probably dead by now because she was like in her 60s when she came to talk to us. So by the time she talked to my sister, she was probably like in her late 80s. So I would assume that she's dead by now. But the reason why I like learning about the Holocaust so much is because I like their stories of survival. Another Holocaust movie I would recommend you guys watch is called The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. That makes me cry. So be warned for that. The second book by Lois Lowry I wanted to talk about was The Giver. I remember being so bored by this book when I read it in 7th grade. I can't remember what exactly I didn't like about it, but rereading it, one thing that really stood out to me was when the Giver is telling Jonah about his relationship with Rosemary. And I really love the flashback scene about how their relationship built up. Now I really want to watch the movie because guess who plays Rosemary in the movie? Taylor Swift. So I'm excited to see that movie because of her. Then the next book in this TBR that I wanted to talk about is The Things They Carried, which I just finished. So The Things They Carried was a book that I read in World Lit World Studies class in 11th grade at Sohegan High School. And it is a series of vignettes about people who are going through fighting in the Vietnam War. And this is very similar to The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros, which I read in 9th grade when I had Peggy Silva for a teacher. And what I liked about both of these books is the fact that you learn a lot about people in different parts of their lives and what they go through. Like, you learn about what it's like for people to be at war, for in the case of The House on Mango Street, what it's like to grow up in a Spanish-American family, because Sandra Cisneros is Puerto Rican or Dominican or Spanish. I don't remember what nationality she is, but basically the short stories in her book are about growing up in a family that is of a different nationality. And I really liked learning about that. And I really found The Things They Carried to be powerful because you never really know what goes on in war until you read that book. So if you're looking for a good book to read that's about what people experience when they're at war, you should read that book, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. Thanks for sticking with me this long, guys. We are almost finished. The last list that I have for you is thriller, murder mystery, suspense, horror recommendations, so you can put them on your reading list for October. So the last book I have that I wanted to talk about in my TBR for books I read in school, do my opinions hold up, is To Kill a Mockingbird. I read this book in 9th grade English class with Peggy Silva, and do my opinions of it still stand up? Yes. The two things that stood up the most for me today are Scout's relationship with her brother, because again, it reminds me of my relationship with my sister. And then Scout's relationship with the neighbor, Boo Radley. Now, do people think that Boo Radley has a disability? And if he has a disability, what do you guys think he has? Because he seems to be isolated from the rest of the community. And that's something that I noticed. And when I first read this book in high school, too, like, what made Boo Radley so mysterious was that he was, like, not treated very well by the rest of the community. And I'm led to suspect that he might have had an undiagnosed disability, because maybe disabilities like mine or mental illnesses weren't as well diagnosed in the time this book was set in, which was like the 1950s, I think. So, yes. Scout's relationship with Rue Raleigh is one thing that definitely holds up. One thing that I don't think holds up very well is racism. This is a good book to read during this time to see how, like, the views of racism hold up, especially after what happened with George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement that happened during COVID. Like, one serious issue that the media seems to be tackling a lot is, like, police brutality. Like, for example, in Brooklyn Nine-Nine or in The Hate U Give, or in, like, episodes of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air where Carlton and Will are thrown in jail because they get pulled over by a white cop. I don't remember that episode, but that deals with racism too. And I feel like those episodes, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is a fairly recent show that came out in like 2013, but oh my god, I'm so sorry. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was on when I was a teenager. I watched the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air at the same time I watched Friends, and I remember that episode when Carlton and Will were pulled over by the cop and sent to jail, and Phil and Vivian had to go bust them out. So, yeah, I would be interested to see what people think of To Kill a Mockingbird and also that episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that I just mentioned. And if you've seen the Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode that I just talked about, feel free to share your opinions with that on me too. On that with me in the comments below. I have not watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine yet, but I have been meaning to watch it. It's on my list, I promise. Thank you for sticking with me. So my final list is actually a list of, well, I recommend all of these books to you guys. I hope you read them and let me know what you think of them. This final list is books that I recommend for you guys to read during October if you're looking for good mystery, thriller, suspense, horror to read during Halloween. Okay, the first book series is a cozy mystery series of 3 books. It's the Aunties trilogy by Jessie Q. Sutanto. The family dynamics in these books reminds me of Turning Red and the relationship that May has with her aunts and her grandma. So I would recommend that you check that series out. Her books are good. The next book I read, so during February and March, I was on a kick of reading Stephen King books. I already talked about The Shining. Another Stephen King book that I really liked was Billy Summers, which is basically a crime thriller, which I enjoyed. I gave that book 4.5 stars on Goodreads, and I would definitely read it again. As I was mentioning before, Stephen King is mostly known for writing horror books, and I don't know how many of his other books I'm going to read, just because I'm still getting into horror books, I guess, and feeling my way around the genre. The next book I wanted to talk about was Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. I read this book back on January 20th, and when I first started to read it, the thing that came to my mind right away was this is basically the Golden Girls, but as assassins. Because this book is basically about a group of 6-year-old ladies who are retired from the FBI who basically get into this situation where they're like fighting for their lives because they're the victims of like a heist or something. It was so good. Deanna Raybourn also has written the Veronica Speedwell series, which I have heard is supposed to be good. Katie Coulson has talked about that. And I think Riley and Sarah have also mentioned it. So I can't wait to read that. That's next on my list too. The next two books I wanted to talk about are Lock Every Door and The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. So I liked the plot twist in Lock Every Door. I didn't like the main character in this book, though, because she was sort of annoying, and I was able to guess the plot twist before she was, which is bad when you are able to figure out the mystery before the character is able to figure it out. And I also really liked The House Across the Lake, because actually this book should have been included in my Beach Lake Vibes TBR list, because it's about an actress who has a lake house and she sees a murder happen from across the way. And basically she's kind of like an unreliable narrator, because like you don't really know if she was part of the murder or if she had anything to do with it. And I don't want to spoil anything, but please check this book out. And I'm really excited for Riley Sager's new book called Middle of the Night, which came out last month. And I have that on reserve at the library right now. The next book I wanted to recommend to you guys is a book I just finished. It's called My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. Katie Coulson posted a video where she basically did a tier ranking of all the Grady Hendrix books and ranked them in the order in which she read them, and I think she rated this book at the top. I love this book for the references to 80s songs that were in the chapter headings, and for the friendship dynamic between Gretchen and Abby. And I just think that Grady Hendrix really has a way to pull you into his plots. This is my first book by him, by the way. I have never read anything by Grady Hendrix until I heard about them through Katie and Sarah and Riley and Jordaline. So I am so excited to be reading a new thriller author. Best Friend's Exorcism is described as by the summary on the back of the book as a combination of beaches in the Exorcist, which is very true. I have never seen The Exorcist, but I've seen Beaches, and that movie was sad. So at least this book, My Best Friend's Exorcism, has like a murder mystery plot going on, or an exorcism, which makes it interesting and a lot less sad than Beaches. But yes, My Best Friend's Exorcism got 5 stars. I just love the setting. I love the mystery. I was on the edge of my seat. I highly recommend it. Another thriller author that I highly recommend is Frida McFadden. I have 2 books of hers, Never Lie and The Housemaid. The Housemaid is part of a 3-book series. I still need to read the next 2 books in that series, but I love The Housemaid. I love the twists and turns in it. Frida McFadden has a great way of writing where she reels you in and keeps you addicted to her plot twist, and she keeps you guessing. And the other Grady Hendrix book I wanted to mention was The Final Girl Support Group, which I am 50% through. It's really good. It's basically about a therapy group for final girls in horror movies, which is a very interesting concept. All of these final girls are fictitious, but I can picture one of them being Sidney Prescott from Scream, because I love Sidney Prescott, and it would really be cool to like see a movie with her going to therapy and dealing with all of the aftermath of dealing with Ghostface. And Scream is coming out with a new movie soon, which I'm really excited. Now I need to binge watch the rest of the movies, because I watched the first Scream movie for the first time last year, and I loved it. I mean, let's be real. I watched it mostly because Courtney Cox is in it, and she's not even a main character in the movie. She plays the news reporter who's trying to, like, ruin the life of Sidney Prescott. But she has a... what do you call it? A change of heart at the end of the movie, and she ends up helping them catch the killer, which I love. So I can't really wait to see what happens in the other movies, and I'm just excited. So yeah, check out all of those horror books I just mentioned at Halloween. If you have any thriller, suspense, horror books for me to read at Halloween, leave them in the comments. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry this was so long, guys, but I hope you enjoyed my wrap-up.